Hi there, welcome back to my channel. I'm Julie. I'm so glad you're here. In today's video, we're going to create 3 beautiful cards. The inspiration for these cards were, of course, from the catalog right here and from my very good friend Janice. I will link her video down in the description box below. For today's card, we're going to do 2 A2 cards, and if you know me, I'm going to throw in a Slimline card. Now, we are obviously going to use the stamp of the month, and if you're a VIP, you get the stamp for free, and for an additional fee, you can also get the thin cut. So I think that that's pretty neat. I decided to go stash diving because when I looked at the images here, I kind of realized that I think they might have used this die right here. And I did have that in my stash. This is from the Cosette card making kit. I'm going to use both of these dies today. I also am going to pull from these ones right here. These are fancy borders. I'm going to take these two right here, and I'm going to create the grass that's right at the bottom of these 2 cards. Now, if you don't have these dies, you might have this stamp set here. Look through your stamps. You might find something that has a little bit of grass, and you could definitely stamp that as well. Or you could look at the image right here and do the fringing just like the artwork. Now, of course, I'm going to bring in a few different things. I am going to use white cardstock. That's all I'm using today. I'm going to bring in a couple of my favorite embossing folders. Again, we're going to do a Slimline card. We're going to do some ink distressing, and I'm going to color those little chicks using orange blend, gold, yellow blend, and citrus blend. I will post how I colored these images at the end of the video, so if you're interested to see that, you can stick around till the end. But for now, I'm going to clear off my desk and we're going to start with card number 1. I've got the products here that we're going to need. I'm drawing my inspiration from this artwork right here, and there's a few steps and we'll go through them together. Now, the first thing I want to do is I actually want to cut an opening in my front panel. So you have to do that first. And then I am going to emboss my white panel with this wood grain here. So I've gone ahead and I've cut my center and I've embossed my card front right here. I like that even though I'm just using white, I'm giving it a little bit of background. And we're going to do 2 things. The next 2 steps are to create a little bit of a blue sky at the top, and also the greenery at the bottom. For the base of my card, I'm just using here, it's a piece of 5.5 by 4.25, but you can just use a piece of scrap as long as it's wide enough. And we're gonna build on this to create our grass. I'm gonna start here with the mowed lawn. It is the lighter of the 2 greens. And I am just going to add this to my panel, but I'm basically just coloring in this piece of white daisy cardstock. So I'm doing the bottom, and I'm just going to add a little bit of darker shades here just for interest, and then I'll come back and I'll even out my blend. Now I'm not too concerned here at the top, but I'll make it a little prettier. So you can see here that you can definitely cut a few strips from one piece. So I'm going to continue on with the ink blending here. We'll add a little bit of water splatters and we'll cut down our pieces to create our backgrounds. Now with one piece, you can definitely do 2 cards. So I'm going to go ahead and do all of the blending, and I'll come back and I'll show you how I'm going to distress it a little bit and cut these out. I did add a few water droplets on my panel, as you can see, so I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to cut 4 strips from this panel, and I'll give myself some options to create my cards. You can see here that I was able to cut 4 pieces. These were the outer pieces, and then these were the inside piece. There's a little bit of a circle missing from this one, but once I layer it up, I don't think it's going to show. So if I sneak it underneath this one, for example, you'll have a nice layered look, and the same for this one right here. So I'm quite happy with the pieces that I was able to get. The next phase is to do the blue sky. I've gone ahead and I did color all of the little chicks, and that is at the end of the video if you're interested in that. So for the next step, we're going to use our card front, and I am going to add just a little bit of salvage patina, so just a little bit of blue in the opening. So I want to add it right here. I'm not going to add a lot of ink because I want it to be nice and light. So I'm barely touching here because I don't want to have that pounce from the tool. I am working my way through the flat domes or the flat applicators, and those tend to leave a little bit of a mark. So I'm going very, very light here. So let's see what that looks like. I think that that looks good. I'd like to make it a little bit more intense, but that's when we put too much ink and then we regret our decision. But I think I should be okay. All right. I like that quite a bit. I do have a little bit of blue here on the edge, but I think that that will still work out quite nicely. Now let's move these out of the way. I'm going to add some 3D foam tape in back of this piece, and we're going to add our little chicks. And do you see here how they're kind of floating? So we're going to give them a soft landing spot, like this cute little hill. And then we can stamp our sentiment. I'm going to use my archival black because it's nice and black. So I'm going to peel back on my sentiment. I like to just put it on my mat, pick it up, and then we're going to stamp. We're going to give it a little test. I think that that looks really, really good. I'm going to washi tape down my front panel just so it doesn't lift on me and I have a good impression, because I need to stamp this at the right location. So I'm going to go into my ink pad, and look at that, looks really, really good. We are going to assemble this card. It's pretty simple. I've got a whole bunch of 3D foam tape right here. So this top piece is a 5 1/4 by 4, just slightly smaller. It gives that nice little border. And then I think I'm going to use this one here, and I'm going to add that right at the bottom, and you'll see it all makes sense once it's all glued together. I'm going to add a little bit of Tombow glue, and then I'm just going to cut the extra piece off. So I've got some glue here. I'm going to pop that on the front panel. And we're going to snip off this little piece. So we've got our front panel all ready to go, right like so. So I'm going to just peel back on some of my tape. Okay, so I'm basically peeling back on the interior pieces. I do like to run tape all the way around my panels when I do something like this. It might be a little excessive, but I find that it works really nicely. We're going to pull back just like so. And we have a nice card front. Even though it's all done in white, I think that it looks really, really good. So we're going to add our little chicks right here. I am not going to do 3D foam on these ones here because I've already popped the front panel, but I am going to secure them down and just add a little bit of glue at the bottom of their feet. And so here we have card number 1, which was inspired by the artwork right here. It's a little different. It's a little bit more crisp and clean, but I like the way it turned out. So we're going to work on this card together next. So again, I've got all of my cut pieces, and I've gone ahead and I've cut my front panel. So the same thing, I cut down the opening first, and then I did the embossing. I've got my little chick here and my flowers. They've all been colored in. So again, the front panel is a 4 by 5.5. We're going to do the same thing. We are going to pop this up. I'm going to add a little bit of blue right here at the back. And if I look at the inspiration here, they have the flowers and the little chicks. So I'm going to do that, but I'm changing it up a tiny little bit so that I have this little chick right here. So let's do the blue. With a very light touch here, I'm adding a little bit of distressing on the card panel. I'm going to add my top piece right here. I'm going to adhere that down with 3D foam, and if you use the wider 3D foam tape, it gives it a lot of stability, and I really do like that. So we're going to position that on top, and then we're going to build our little hills here at the bottom. So I'm going to use a couple of pieces to layer them up. I think that that's going to look really, really good, and it's going to ground my little scene for my card. So I do like the contrast that I've got from just doing ink blending on regular cardstock. I don't think I'm going to use that third piece, but who knows, we'll see. I'm going to adhere this down right on the top panel because I know that I have 3D foam tape and I can't run it all the way across the card front. So we're just going to add a bit of Tombow glue right at the bottom. We're going to snip off the extra length, and then we're going to add that to our card front. I think that that's shaping up really nicely. Let's add our flowers, and I think I'm going to use the tuck points that I've just created for my flowers right here, and then I'm going to add this little guy right here at the bottom. Now, I don't have a lot of room to stamp my sentiment, but I know that it will fit. So I'm going to dry fit all of my card front one more time, and the shortest sentiment on this set is Hey Chick. I've used my Versamat here to help me line up where I want to stamp that sentiment. So I'm going to use my T-ruler. I'm going to dry fit it one more time, and then I'm just going to stamp it with archival black ink. Now you can move this piece if you want to give yourself a little bit more room, but by using your Versamat here, it's a great tool to have. And I'm putting my card front straight on it. I've got my T-ruler running across it, double checking here that it fits, and it does. So we're going to go and do that. But you know what? I'm going to give myself even more chances to do it right. I'm going to give myself a little tick mark here so that I know that I can't go beyond that little pencil mark. All right, we're going to go in. We're going to stamp. And we're going to hold that down, and I think that this looks pretty good. So it's pretty precise stamping, but it can be done, as you can see. Let's give it a test, and it's perfect. It just fits. Now, that little pencil mark, don't erase it right away because you could smudge your sentiment, so work on something else, let it dry a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead here and pull back on my foam tape, and we're going to position our panel at the front. So I'm just exposing a little bit of the foam tape. It just makes it easier if you're not lining up your panel. You can move it a little bit, and then you just pull back on your tape and make sure to press everything in. It's a neat little trick that I've learned along over the years, and it seems to work quite nicely. So we've got our panel, we've got our stamp sentiment, we're pushing everything down. We're going to add our little flower, and I'm going to add just a little bit of glue at the bottom right here. I'm going to pull back on the foam tape, and we're going to tuck that in, and you'll see that it just fits right beside our sentiment. Just like that. I think that that looks pretty sweet. We're going to add our little chick. I'm going to add a little bit of 3D foam at the top and just regular Tombow glue at the bottom. Let's pull our inspiration artwork right here. Now it is quite different. It's a little simpler and a little brighter all at the same time, but I'm quite happy on how this turned out. So let's move this to the side, and we're going to work on card number 3, which is a slimline card. I did use this great slimline die. I really like this one. I ran that first, and then I used this embossing folder, and I really like the way this turned out. I love the flowers on this one. We're going to add our little chicks here and our flowers in the center. Now, I'm not sure about that little chick. We'll have to come back to it. I know that I want to add some of the blue, very much like the other 2 cards. So we're going to fold back on our base here, and I'm going to add a little bit of blue to kind of mimic the sky. I'm going to add a few pencil marks around that circle just to give me an indication as to how far I can go with the blue. Because I've got 3 openings, I need to contain that as much as possible. So this is going to help me with that process. So I'm just adding really tiny little tick marks all around this circle. Again, this is just to help me when I start my ink blending. So I've got my little circles, they're all mapped out. You probably can't see the little faint lines, but it will help me quite a bit. So I know that this little chick is going to go here at the bottom. So I want to go on the opposite side with the ink blending, and I'm going to go lightly here. It's a little bit difficult with these tools sometimes, I find, because they're square. They have a square or an edge to them, but it can be done. You just have to go really, really lightly, and I think that that's going to shape up nicely. So I will go back and forth with the inking and kind of lining up my piece to make sure that I'm not going into an area that I don't want to add ink. So basically I'm going back and forth here and just inking along and adding my little images to see how that's going to turn out. So I know that I want to add my flower on the opposite end. So I'm kind of doing a crisscross pattern if you want with the ink blending. So let's take a look at the results when we put our top panel on. I like that you've got a little bit of blue popping from the circles. It gives it a nice dimension. I'm going to darken them up a tiny little bit. I'm going to add my images. So I know I want my flowers here. I really want to use this little guy, but it really looks out of place. So I'm going to put them to the side, and I think I'm just going to stamp my sentiment. It does fit inside that circle. We're going to use, once again, archival black ink. I'm just going to line everything up on my mat, and we're going to stamp this right on top of this card. As promised, I'm going to go ahead and go through the process of coloring in these images. I am using the yellow gold. This is the mid-tone. And I'm going all around the little chick with little dots or little flick motions. I'm also using this stamp image, like where you see the little black dots. I'm using that as a reference to help me with my shading. So again, all of this is done using the yellow gold in the mid-tone. The next step here is to pull that color inwards into the body, and we're going to do that with a little bit of the light tone, and I'm going into little circular motions here, and I'm dragging that color into the center of the body. Now you can see that it's just little flick motions and pulling all of that color in, but that creates a really nice blend. Now for the next part here, I'm going to use the darkest shade of the citrus blend because I want my little chick to be nice and yellow. So I'm again going into little circular motions, and I am blending all of those colors together, and it just gives it a really nice pop. Now the next step is to color in the beak and her little feet. We're going to start with the tip of the beak, and we are using just plain old orange, the light shade, and then closest to the face, we're going to go in with the darkest shade of this marker. I'm going to do the same thing I did with their little feet. I'm going to add the light shade where there's no little dots, in the image, and where I see little dots, I'm going to go back with the darkest shade to finish that off. And I think that that looks really cute. It's nice and bright. I'm going to let that dry back, and then we're going to go on here and color these flowers. Now for the flowers themselves, I'm going to start here with the green, which is the light green, and I'm going to go with the dark shade. You know what? I think I'm going to start with the mid. That way I'm halfway there, and if I look at the image up here, I see that there's a lot of shading. And again, try to look at the lines that are in that stamped image. So I'm just going to drag that through with the mid-tone. And then we're going to go back. We're not going to use the light, and we're going to go back with the darker shade, and then I'm just going to add them here and there. It really doesn't matter, like the source of light and all of that. I don't think it matters for this image all that much. You can just add some shading and just go as much or as little as you want. So here you saw that I pulled the darkest shade of the alpine green, and I'm doing the stems of each of those flowers. I think that that looks really good. Now for these flowers here, you see that I have 3 that are already done. I kind of had to test them a little bit, and I landed on the Citrus Blend mid-tone. I like the brightness of that yellow, and I covered the entire flower with the mid-tone. And that gives me a really nice base to start blending out those colors. So I'm going to do all of the outer petals, again, using the Citrus mid-tones. And then I'm going to go back and I'm going to use that gold yellow, and I'm going to follow the veining, if you want, of each of those petals, and I'm going to add that to the exterior petals. Now the center of the flower, some of them, if you look at them, are darker, so that gave me an opportunity to change it up, and I'll do that here in just a moment. I'll change that up to the mid-tone of the gold yellow, and it really does make that flower pop. So I'm going to do all of that center with the gold yellow, and I'm going to finish it all off with the darkest shade for the little stamens right in the center. And I really like the contrast of yellow between the little chicks and the flowers. So all of the images are pretty much colored in the same manner, and using 5 colors really. I'm going to go back here and I'm going to do the top again, mid-tone citrus, and I'm pulling that through. It's really not that difficult. You just have to take your time and learn how to play with your markers, because they are quite forgiving, and when they dry back they look great. So I think that that's going to look really good. Now I am introducing much darker colors. Like this is much darker than what we have here in the artwork, but I think it's going to look really, really good. So pretty much everything was done with these 5 colors right here. And it's not that difficult. You start on the edge, you follow the little dots and the lines of the artwork, and you get a pretty nice image, which is not too difficult to color in. I hope that this was helpful for you in your coloring for these cards. Let's do a little project recap. I really love the way that these cards turned out. I missed a little bit of the assembly. I forgot to press play on the recording, but let's talk through them together. Here is card number 1. I really like the boldness and the simplicity of this card. I did go ahead and I stamped those really pretty flowers using honey butter. I think that that's a nice touch to add to the card. I added a few blue gems from my stash, and again, I really do like the way this turned out. Here is this card right here. I changed up the image. I just felt that the little chick needed to look inside as opposed to outside. That's just my preference. Again, a little bit of blue gems on this card, stamping those flowers on the envelopes. And of course, if you know me, you know that I love Slimline, so I was able to add some of these images on a Slimline card. I love the embossing folder. It screams spring to me. It's so pretty. And I had colored this little guy right here, and my idea was to put him up here, but it was just too much. So I think it's a nice little touch to add him on the inside. That's it for me today. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I will continue doing videos here on YouTube. I'm sure you've all heard the sad news that Close to My Heart will be closing. For us as makers, we will be closing our websites as of April 30th, but rest assured, I am a creator and I will be here to inspire you. I want to thank Close to My Heart for allowing me to grow on this platform, and my heart goes to all of my CTMH sisters. It has been a wonderful ride. I know that we will still keep in touch. Some of the friendships that I've made here are for life. Have yourself a fantastic week, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.